being here. I know we don't normally have something on a Tuesday afternoon this late, but this is so important. We originally were going to have some visitors from America doing this presentation, but with the what is it? The coronavirus, they've been stopped. The Americans, you know, they're like the paranoid. They've been stopped from traveling to us here in Nigeria. Why, I don't know, but hey ho. So, but that doesn't worry me a bit, because I have seen these people present before. These are the people from, you're probably sick of me talking about the Zeebah Foundation. I know Zeebah Foundation just falls off my tongue now, but I think it's important that you get it right from the horse's mouth rather than me and my experiences with them. I've worked with this team now this is my 3rd year, and I've seen what they can do, and I've seen the differences they can make in children's lives. And when they make a difference in a child's life, they make a difference in the whole family's life. So because we're forward thinking here, and because we have children in our school that currently are affected by all the things that the team are about to talk about, I'm grateful to each and every one of us. I'm grateful to Mrs. Jagaday for saying yes, we can have them in. I'm grateful to Mrs. Jagaday for never turning a child away, and that's an amazing thing. That's a real feather in any school's cap. Every single child is welcome here. So whilst we welcome them, we have to be seen to address their needs as well. And that's what this is all about. So sit back, enjoy, and then I hope you've got lots of questions. If you could save your questions till the end, that would be really, really appreciated. So with your notepads, as they're saying things, if you think, oh, I wonder what happens if, make a note, and then at the end, if we can have questions and answers. Yes? Brilliant. Thank you, Ms. Cynthia.
Okay. Before we get started, could I just remind all my staff and team here that you should be mindful of making sure that your CPD record is up to date. You're responsible for it. So yes, I keep a record, and yes, I can with Miss Glory HR also. But the main responsibility is, because it's obviously yours. So to make sure that from today's training and all the other trainings that you've updated your CP record, and I shall be touching base with you very, very shortly to talk about your CP record. My little bit is autism and autistic children. As you know, if you can't work in primary schools or even secondary schools without having experience of these most amazing children. So I'm very much looking forward to hear what we're going to be given today. I know that they are a truly valuable addition to any school, and actually helps us to make sure that we are truly differentiating learning, because it's not all needs that become visible, and we have in our different ways. I think for me, having worked in primary schools for quite a long time, the thing about autism that sticks in my head is that it's something which appears to be very obvious in boys and not so obvious in girls. And they're so that you may correct it. I don't know if Miss Bree, this is something that you're also aware of, because I know within our London schools there are many girls who have autism who escape that autism awareness. And so that is why we've got to make sure that we have this full awareness and understanding of all our children, and I will say particularly girls, because girls quietly hide it, or it manifests itself in sometimes different ways to the ways it's manifested in boys. So please be aware of that, especially the conversation that we were having this morning, Miss Breen, around one of our little girls, and quite often sometimes they are, kind of categorized as something else. So that's the thing for me uppermost, with lots of experience with boys with autism and the different ways it manifests itself in. And I have experience of where it's actually taken almost into kind of adulthood before it's diagnosed in females. So with that in mind, I'm sure it's going to be a really, really beneficial afternoon. So not sure who I hand over to now. I hand over to...
Okay, my name is Ngozi Livinus. I am the marketing person at the Zeebah Foundation, and I just want to officially, I didn't come here all by myself, so I want to, on behalf of the CEO, the board of directors of the Zeebah Foundation, the management and the staff, I sincerely want to appreciate you all, the management of the school, SpringHall British School, for giving us this platform to speak, to sensitize and to create awareness on this autism spectrum disorder. And also in commemoration of the forthcoming World Autism Day, coming up on the 2nd of April, is a recognized, an internationally recognized event that happens annually, focusing on the spotlight, putting the spotlight on the hurdles that these kids face, people living with autism face on every day, their day-to-day life, and to also celebrate their uniqueness because they are really unique. And also focusing on one particular thing, acceptance, which is still what we are dealing with here. Awareness, this is part of awareness we are creating, but you don't just create it in a structured form, place like we are now. You can also do that by spreading the word individually, talking to people, going to schools. That's what we do. A lot of people don't even know much about it. But the more we speak about it, the more people get to accept and know that there is a solution to this. It's very bad if you have a diagnosis from the doctor and the doctor said, I'm sorry, there is no solution. But in this case, there is something that can be done about it. So that's our focus today. And I didn't just come by myself. I also came with my colleagues, Mr. Milona and Zimi, and the media team, and we're going to, talk on so many aspects of this spectrum. The signs and the symptoms, the behavioral aspects of it and whatnot, and the benefits of any intervention. So I want us to sit, listen, write down your questions at the end of the whole session. The Q&A is going to be the very last thing, and I want it to be an interactive session. Feel free to ask questions, we answer each other, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you.
Okay, standing on the existing protocol, I will just go right into the business of the day. As she has earlier said, we're here to talk to you about ASD. Maybe you've heard of it before, or maybe this is the first time. ASD is an acronym for Autism Spectrum Disorder. As the name implies, it's a spectrum. That means we have some people at the top end, and then we have some people at the beginning of the spectrum. Autism spectrum disorder is a developmental disorder as well as a neurological disorder. It's something that has to do with the brain. And since you can't see through the skull to see what's happening in the brain, it is manifested in different domains. What makes up a human being? It is our ability to interact, ability to communicate, and the way that we behave. If any of these domains is being affected, then it takes a whole different turn in how we really are. Autism spectrum disorder affects an individual's ability to communicate, to interact socially, and then it causes them to behave in certain ways that some of us might have seen in our classrooms before or our churches, because everywhere we go there are children. So like I said earlier, that autism affects an individual's ability to communicate, interact socially, behave in a certain way, and even causes some delay in our developmental milestone. All individuals are expected to reach a certain level at different stages of our life. 0 months, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 18 months, 24 months, as they go. But if a child is reaching these stages and there are some lapses in these milestones, that's a call that we should check it. That's a call that we need to look further. It's no longer business as usual. Oh yeah, my child will crawl. Oh yeah, she will babble. No, it's no longer business as usual. Once you just see something that is out of the ordinary, then that means you're supposed to look deeper. Some of us are parents, teachers, we've been with children time in, time out. So by now we know that at 3 months, this is what a baby is expected to do. At 6 months, babies start babbling. Some babble even before that time, right? So if a child is not doing this, or a child is not trying to grab things, or a child is not giving you eye contact, are we just going to let it slide? No. We're going to pay more attention to looking at what's happening with them. Because it is this attention that we pay that helps us identify things that are not going right. What we preach at the Zeebah Foundation is early identification and early intervention. So having said that, what are we supposed to be looking out for? That will take me to possible red flags. If a child is avoiding eye contact, then that means something is not going on as it should. If a child is not trying to play with something, maybe you just give your child toys and your child is not interested. Or your child is only interested in a particular toy. And you know children want to explore. That's the stage in their life that they explore. But if this child is not exploring other options rather than just a chosen one, then that means you should look into it. At certain stage, children are expected to do pretend plays, right? You see your baby trying to feed the dog. You see them saying, oh, mommy, I'm making macaroni. But if you have a child who is not exhibiting some of these things, you're expected to look into it, right? Children at certain stage want to know how something works. My baby today kept playing with my ID card. She wouldn't let me rest. It catches her attention. That means she's trying to see what's this. You're trying to explore something new. If your child, when I mean your child, that could be your student or anyone around you, is not doing some of these things, then that means you should look into it. Because those are the basis for social interaction. It is how you interact with your environment, how you interact with people that you see, that builds up to you interacting socially in the larger society. If your child is not showing you something that they like, they're not sharing their enjoyment with you. Oh, mommy, see what I drew in school today. Or, daddy, see, I got JoJo points because I was the best student in this and this and that. If they are not able to do that, then that means you're supposed to check it. Even before these times that they can talk or that they can play or they can do some of these, there are milestones that you're supposed to track. It's not prevalent in this part of our world, but you can ask for it. I know that in other developing countries, you go to doctors for a check, 6 months, 9 months, 18 months. Those are things that are done regularly. But even if it is not done here, you can ask for it, right? Ask the doctor or your professional to help you monitor your child's milestones so that you know quickly if something is not right, so that you swing into action, because the earlier, the better. If you identify them early and you seek intervention, it increases their chances of living an independent life, right? Remember, from 0 to 3 years, whatever you do, a child is a tabula rasa, it's a blank slate. Whatever you put in there sticks. So imagine if you seek for intervention earlier and you start working on your skills, because believe me, they can learn. If you think that they cannot learn, then please, I want you to leave that behind right now, because they actually can learn. They just need you to teach them. They learn in different ways. Are you ready to explore these different ways that they learn? How do you explore them if you don't know what is not right? It is when you know these things that helps you want to get involved, that helps you want to teach them in the way that they best understand. So, like I was saying, for social interaction, I've been able to tell you that if your child is not making eye contact appropriately, then you should look into it. If your child is not sharing their interest or enjoyment with you, you should look into it. If your child is not willing to explore, your child doesn't want any eye contact, you know, children love cuddles and the likes, but your child is resisting eye contact, physical touch and the likes, then that means you should look into it. If your child is not willing to try new things, you should look into it. If your child doesn't seem to be learning at age-appropriate level, you should look into it. All these things makes up a human being. All these things enables us to function in the larger society. All these things indicate how we interact with the fellow beings. All these things and many more. My colleagues here will be shedding more light on communication and then behaviors. Thank you very much.
Okay, so may I introduce my name? She used my pet name actually. My name is Ezine Wazi, but she called me Zini, so that's fine. So I'll be throwing more light on communication. And from a layman's language, we understand that communication is interaction between individuals. There must be a receiver and there must be a sender. That is basic. So we are looking at children under the spectrum. So statistics have shown that basically about 40% of these children in the spectrum don't speak. Basically, they don't even utter a word. They may make sounds, but they can't make meaningful words. You still have another set that says, okay, 28 to 40%, they kind of speak early, like by 6 months to 18 months, you could hear them saying mama, papa, then all of a sudden, oh, they go mute. It's not that they were sick, it's not that they were traumatized. They may be, although, but most of them don't, they just shut down. So you still see that some parents will be like, oh, but this child was speaking, something went wrong. Literally, under the spectrum, nothing went wrong. It's just that at that stage, they've reached where they could speak and they could no more speak. So we're looking at a situation where we are going to look at what indicates that, okay, in this aspect of communication, this child is trying to exhibit some characteristics of someone that is on the spectrum. And like my colleague said, it's a spectrum. You have the high functioning, low functioning. It's a broad spectrum. It's broad. That the way A functions is not the same way B would function or C would function. And it's also on record that you could have kids, the ratio of 4 to 1, 4 boys to 1 girl. You understand that, which exhibits that sense or that characteristic of being on the spectrum. However, I'll just list a few examples and I'll try and elaborate on them so that we can get a clear picture. I normally use real life instances to make the picture more realistic and clearer. So I've already spoken of delayed speech, that yes, some may speak and they'll shut down. Some don't speak at all. Some will just utter words. In fact, they may just be like, how are you? Fine, and that's it. They cannot really make conversations, you understand, unless prompted or even taught. Most of them are taught to have a conversation. They can't do that on their own like regular children. We can also see that, okay, let me step back a little. You have a kid, let's just say a year old. Basically, you know something shiny is passing by, apart from the fact that, okay, the child may find this thing interesting, but something shiny may be passing by, the child would look, follow that. Kids on this spectrum may not do that. While you're even talking to them, they're looking elsewhere apart from your face. You're trying to show them something, they're looking elsewhere, point at, hey, you know, that's the sign that something is not right. Then another one is repeated words. So you have this case. Instead of saying, okay, you're used to saying, okay, come here. You've been teaching him that. Instead of any other question you ask him, how are you? Come here. That's what he would say. Please come here, come here, come here. You've not even spoken to him, come here. It's because that's what's ringing in his mind. And he keeps saying it, not on demand, at his own pace, whatever, it's just come here, that's just him. So that's a sign that, why is this child repeating what I'm saying? That's what we also call echolalia, saying something repeatedly or something has heard over time and keeps repeating it all the time. That's one. Then some of them reverse pronouns. Instead of saying you, they say I. I, you say you. They mix it all up. You understand? Eat, you still be I. You, still be I. They, I. You know, they are used to that word I, or you, or you. They just reverse that pronoun all the time. So it is a point to note that, okay, something is going on. Then we have unrelated answers. So I had this kid I was working with one time, the initial stage. So practically I was teaching him about receptive instruction, using clap hands, touch head, wave bye. So he got all that. He's been learning them and getting them. But if you come to him and say, hi, give me high five. So I say, give me high five. He's touching head, he's clapping, he's giving you high five. All of them, they are not related, but I just said high five. So kids on that spectrum behave that way. They give you unrelated answers. Most of the time, they give you all the answers of everything they have learned. I remember one time, one kid we had, you could tell him, come here, and said A, B, C, D, F, G, and he just be coming. You understand? Sometimes he comes, sometimes he doesn't. He just keeps wandering around. So that's a point to know. Then, like I mentioned earlier, some of them use few words. Come, or how are you? Fine. I said that before. Stuff like one-word answers. Most of them use one-word answers. That's even those that have been trained or those that have been receiving therapy. Because when you look at it, most of them, like we mentioned, they don't talk. And when they do, we try to teach with fewer words. And once they pick that word, it's what they would use and be giving back to you. For most responses you expect from them, they'll give you one word answer. So another point to note is that they are most times emotionless. What do I mean by that? They are angry. You could say, I'm sorry, I have to say some water right now. So they talk to you. When a kid is happy, when you come home, hey, mommy, 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 mommy. These kids don't do that. They can't express joy to you. Even when they are sad, sometimes they just sit on their own and they're crying. No provocation, no encounter, nothing. They just start crying. They might even cry the whole day. Sometimes they might just cry for some minutes, the next minute they're excited over absolutely nothing. So it's a sign to look out for such. And then you are hurt. They don't even care. They don't even know. They might even step on you and be walking. You're crying. Oh, like it's okay to be like, even if a child doesn't really speak but understands, you could sit here and just clean the tear. But these kids don't get it. They just walk past you like nothing is happening. They could even step on you like nothing is happening. Kick your toy, kick your leg, pass by you, nothing is happening. Because they just do not understand. Their brains are wired in such a way that they can't express that concern towards you. They can't do pretend play. This child that does not even communicate, how can he start saying, oh, I'm a mommy, I'm a doctor, come let me check your temperature, come let me do this, I'm a doctor, I'm a teacher, or I'm a parent. They can't do all that. Those ones are far-fetched for them. These things are basically things you might even end up teaching them. So, like we said earlier, can't even understand jokes. This person is not even having a conversation with you, so how can you start telling him, oh, your ears are like that of a rabbit? And you can't understand that, you're just talking to yourself. So basically, communication is one point that is so very obvious, even from at infancy, that you would notice with a child on the spectrum, because this child, the first communication skill he's supposed to exhibit is the eye contact, and he doesn't have it. Not even to you, not even to the parent. They may, on rare occasions, have this connection with one person, sometimes mom, sometimes a teacher, sometimes a particular friend in the class, but across every other person is not even generalized. So these are points that you would notice and say, oh, okay, please, let's look into this issue, and something is definitely not okay for the child. So with this, I think I'll move it to my colleague to talk about behavior.
Okay, talking about behavior, I think as teachers, we must have experienced problem behavior in most of our kids in classroom, right? And this is one of the signs to look out for in ASD, inflexible behavior. As much as there is an acceptance issue, I still think most parents, they may not even give a red flag or find a solution to whatever problem it is based on social and communication. But once the behavior gets in the way, like they can't take their children out and do some things, and they find out that this, I know I've had other kids, this behavior is kind of strange. You see them running straight to you or straight to whosoever to find out why this child is behaving in that manner. So that brings me to behavior modification. I'm going to be using my notes. And the goal of behavior modification is to change an undesirable behavior to a desirable one. Nobody wants to have a kid in class who doesn't behave appropriately, because no matter how you see it, it's going to affect the attention of other children. But we should also know that behaviors don't just occur, even in our typical kids. For them to behave in a certain way, something must have triggered that behavior. And remember, inappropriate behavior can lead to social isolation and interference with learning and development. That's why it's very easy for teachers to fish out a child who has inappropriate behavior and takes it to the authority next to find out whatever is wrong with the child. And this brings us to the functions of behavior. What functions of behavior is to identify why a behavior is occurring. Why does behaviors occur? A behavior can occur because the child wants access to tangibles. What are tangibles? Things, items, toys. Tangibles or activities like going to the playground. It could be a reason why the child is having some disruptive behaviors in class. Talking about access to attention. Sometimes the child just wants attention from you, and you've been all talking, you're not giving attention. The child can decide to do something disruptive, and then you speak and say, why are you disturbing my class? Now you have reinforced the child with the attention that he's seeking. So that's part of the function of behavior. We talk about escape. I'm sure most of us have experienced escape. You're teaching in the classroom, and this child, every time you're talking about teaching numeracy, he wants to go and use the restroom. Excuse me, ma, I want to use the restroom. And it keeps occurring. You as a teacher, if you're not knowledgeable enough, you might not even know why he does that. And that's why we take data. Because you cannot just say, this is a function, I think this is why he does this. Except you take data to chart to know the function of the behavior. That's why we use something called ABC data sheet in behavioral analysis. Then the sensory stimulation. It's kind of difficult to identify that, but people do all kinds of sensory stimulation, like flip-flapping, like making some kind of noise. There are several things that stimulate these kids we don't know about except we take data. So behaviors don't just occur, it's happening for a reason. But how do you identify it? And for behavior modification to be successful, it has to be structured, consistent, and clear. Structure means, having it structured means that you have to reward a desired behavior. As much as you want a child to behave in an appropriate way, and you've been teaching him to, say, raise up his hand in class before he answers questions and not just throwing the answer in the air. If you've been correcting this child over time, and then for the very first time the child raises up his hand, does it the right way, what are you meant to do? Reward the behavior, right? Doing all those things kind of sends a signal to the child. Okay, if I'm rewarded for doing an appropriate behavior, that means I should do it often for me to get. There are many ways to reinforce a child. In our own part, we usually do, when a child comes to our center, we usually do what we call preference assessment. We lay out toys, especially when it depends on the age of the child, and see what tickles the child's fancy, see what the child likes most. And we'll be told that particular activity or item and save it for the big things that the child is going to do to make the child end that particular thing. So for you in the classroom, you may not have an accessible toy, but you have your praise. Good job, John. That's a great one. Thank you for raising up your hand. Please always specify on the reason why you're giving the praise. If you don't specify, the child, after doing the right thing, must have done something immediately, and the child might think you're praising him for the letter instead of the former. So that's why it's good for you to, yes, reinforce the actual one, speak about it. So that brings me to the supportive behavior strategies for children. Why do I say supportive behavior strategies? As much as we know there are so many behaviors kids can exhibit in the classroom, we need to know strategies, ways that we can be able to curb these behaviors. For example, let the child know what will happen next. I'll use a kid I worked with as an example. He had transitioning issues, transitioning from one task to the other. So while working with him, the first week I was trying to study this kid in the classroom to know what was actually causing the problem behavior. He just doesn't like the fact that once we are done with this, the next thing everybody go to the computer room. He just couldn't transition easily with these people. So when I figured it out, he wasn't so verbal, he was still doing hand leading. What I did was to take pictures of the different activities that they usually do next. I got their timetable. Okay, after this, what happens next? So before that happens, I will ask the teacher, how many minutes more do you have? She tells me, I'm like, okay, KO, after this, we are going to have this. Preparing his mind to transition so that I will have less disruptive behaviors. So what the strategies is talking about is for you to know what you can do. Take care of it first before the antecedent. And remember, the consequences, the response you give to any behavior a child has determines the future occurrence of that behavior. If you don't give the appropriate consequences, it's either going to increase the behavior in future, it's going to decrease it. Then I would talk about acknowledge your child or student for complying with your request. I already mentioned it. If you've been doing this all the time, it's not rocket science. Don't think you teach it once and the child gets it. You've been doing it subsequently over time, and then this first time this child understands that, okay, he does the right thing. Please don't withhold your praise. That may be your only opportunity to set it right with the child. Tell the child specifically what you expect and allow him to earn privileges for complying with your expectation. This one is kind of dicey, especially why I say it's kind of dicey. It's very important across all kids, but we usually use it for people who has understood the concept to an extent. I had a kid, he's grown, he was about 10 or 11. In his school, he likes to use the elevator. So I would say, okay, when you do this and this and this, before we start running whichever program, you're going to use the elevator. And that was my own thing. And I had a token board for him. Or you draw a token board and say, if you exhibit these appropriate behaviors, you have your list, putting your hands down to yourself because he had fidgety hands and all the likes, all the inappropriate behaviors that could be a disruption to your therapy. I said, when you meet this point, for every 5 points, you earn a token for every 5 points. So at the end of the third one, we are going to use the elevator. That kind of helps me. When he wants to do something, he may, oh, I get it. So he puts himself back in shape, knowing that there is a reward afterwards. That's why it's very important to state it. Give choices. Okay, I also use this particular kid because I like to use real life cases because we work with children and not ghosts. So this kid, they'll all bring them out in this place in their school, I think the playground, and then they'll say, after the break, everybody line up. Who wants to go to the engineering room? People will raise their hands up. Who wants to go to this room, that? But he didn't know what was expected of him. And I also wanted to introduce the power of choices, making choices, because it's also important. You just can't make it all rigid for these children. You have to make them understand that you have the power of choice. You can say no, you can say yes, you can choose whatever you like. And I also used pictures for that. I went to the classroom, I took pictures of what each of the activities meant, and then I started taking him through that in the therapy. Then I'll drop it when it was time, I will show him the card. Anyone he points to is where I'm going to take him to. At first, it may not even make sense to him, but over time, he's going to understand what you actually expect of him. So that's why you have to give them that privilege of making choices. Another point is, for some children with language difficulties, showing the child the activity or toy that he'll be utilizing next is helpful to encourage him to move from one activity to another. Transitioning as well. Visual schedule. Sometimes most of them work with visuals. It's hard if you talk, but when you show them visuals, it kind of makes sense to them. There was a kid, I think he was 7, his mom complained about him having a tough time. Why I'm emphasizing on visual schedules is because it's very important, it has helped us a lot. How bedtime is always a problem, nap time, bathing time is a problem, eating time is a problem. And then we said, okay, instead of just printing out pictures from the computer, why don't you take pictures of him doing those activities at home, and we use it to make like a visual schedule for him. Put it somewhere and let him be the one to check it. Brush your teeth, he goes and sees that what he's meant to do is to brush his teeth. He goes through it and then he puts a check. And gradually, it's not going to be forever. This is like the first step to it. You are going to gradually fade it. When the child kind of has understood the routine, because most of the times they are used to routines. They like routines a lot. Over time, he must have memorized the routine, and you fade out that visual schedule and allow the child to be able to handle it, do it normally, like every typical child. Distract and redirect problematic behavior instead of saying stop or no. I had that experience. I had a kid. I think Mrs. Brim knows this kid. He got so used to saying no. Everything, every time, for everything you ask him, no. No. I said, what is this with? Even something that is beneficial to him, he would always give a no. So I thought to myself, and I spoke with mom, I said, I think over time, this kid has gotten used to hearing the no, 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 no. The mom was like, so what do I say when he's doing something wrong? I'm like, just rephrase it. Instead of saying no, you can say something like, I think you should try doing something else like this. I think just rephrase the sentence and don't give a no. We started teaching yes. We get down to that level to teach the child how to say yes. And over time, he was able to understand the difference between yes and no. It's very important to redirect. Have a child who is scripting, you know what it means to script, saying things all by himself, and instead of saying, no, stop scripting. No, stop scripting. You could say, okay, can you please sing me a nursery rhyme? What did I do? I just redirected that particular problem behavior to something else. I didn't say no, but I redirected him to do something more beneficial to him. That's why it's very important. Then, make directions clear, short, and concrete. When we do therapies, one of the instructional control that we try to gain over these kids is to have them come here to the table. Now you don't expect the child who is still battling with cognitively with languages, trying to put it together and say, come John, come over here and sit down here so we walk. That's a lot for him to comprehend. So what we do is we keep it short, simple and clear. Come here. Come here. You can start with that. Like I said, you can fade these things. Gradually you're going to increase the target. Come over, come to the table. You have increased it by just one more word. Gradually you're going to increase it. When the child has the capacity to understand what you're saying, make it clear, keep it short, keep it simple. Then take advantage of teachable moments. Capturing learning opportunities. I'll give an example that I have here. If a child snatches a toy from another child, teach him how to use his word to ask for the toy appropriately. You may not wait to when you're having one-on-one therapy to do that. It may not happen again, and probably it happens and not in your presence, probably at home, and mom is complaining and all that. What do? When you see the child exhibit that behavior, come in immediately and capture the learning moment and teach the child what to do. And I'll use this kid again, KO. In the school where I used to go for therapy, they had this open hall where they usually keep a couple of chairs, like random chairs, white in color. And just this particular one was blue in color. And then for some reason he feels he's the one that is entitled to sit on that chair. And when other kids, even if a child is sitting on it, he's going to pull up the chair. He's not even going to say, excuse me. He's going to literally pull the chair off the person's bum and pick it up. And then I'm like, no, you don't do that. Can you ask nicely? I taught him that, and then it was working very well with me, but when I go, the teacher said, when you're not around, he just still does it. I'm like, okay, why don't you do something? Put the chair away. When he doesn't see that particular chair, he's going to take another chair, and that ends the behavior. Sometimes the antecedent is what matters. When you're able to find out what happens before that behavior, it will help you a way to minimize or reduce the display of disruptive behavior. So when giving tasks, assignments to many children, let them know that the task will end. I think for typical children, even some typical children have issues with that. Don't give them an open-ended task. They don't even know when this task is going to end. Like, I'll give an example. You have plenty toys filled all over the room, and then you tell him to clean up. It may get him really worked up. But when you say, can you clean up, take 10 pieces of toys and put in a bin, you have a specific amount of toy you want that child to clean up. So it's not going to put so much pressure on him and cause him to start throwing tantrums and start acting out, which sometimes their behavior, one particular thing can trigger a behavior and is going to last very long or very short. Another example of a clear-ended task is like a puzzle, 10-piece puzzle. The child is seeing the puzzle. He knows that do puzzle, I'm fixing the puzzle, but it's going to end. And not when you just leave it open like that. After a while, at the table, they are going to get all worked up and then start having behaviors. I remember most of them have fleeting attention span. What we usually do when we assess the child, we already know the capacity of this child. Some children don't last more than 3 seconds. Yes, as short as 3 seconds is so short, but some of them can't even do up to that. Even when we are teaching them to scribble or to do something, you don't expect to draw a circle and expect the child to color up the whole circle. Our target from the child for the child could be as could be minimum of 2 seconds. Let's color. Good job. That's good. Doing a nice job. Gradually, when the child understands the concept, we increase it from 2 seconds to 5 to 6 to 10, and before you know it, that child sits on the table and does the whole work. The next one I'll be talking about is stay calm when interacting with this child. I understand yelling and threatening will not make behavior better. It may stop it for the short term, but the behavior will occur again. Children with autism are not choosing to act in the way that is frustrating to you or anyone else. They just need positive support from you to help them meet their emotional and behavioral needs. Trust me, if they knew any better, they wouldn't behave the way they do. And the earlier you handle it the best way possible with professionalism, the better these children get at. I think one of the things that keeps us focused in this job is the fact that we have worked with kids who you see and you're so proud, like, wow, this is how far this child has gone to. And I think it's the same with every other teacher. When you see a child come in the first time and this child is couldn't even hold a pencil, finger grip, and now you're watching this child not just having a finger grip but writing things. I think it's your greatest moment. No matter how frustrated you feel, you just know you're making progress. Finally, I want to state that it's important to know that you may not see change as quickly as possible. This is one of the problems we face with not just parents. Everybody expects to see, oh no. Your child or student may not be used to your new technique and may even push harder to frustrate you. But be consistent with whatever you're doing, and gradually you're going to see a headway. I've been teaching this particular kid just color discrimination. You won't believe it, it's almost a term now, 3 months. And then it's one of my biggest points today. And then for the first time I said, what color is it? She said, yellow! I'm like, great job! You need to see, I threw a party, like we were dancing. I couldn't believe it. And trust me, I didn't want to even ask her again, so she doesn't mess up my job. But for the first time, she got it right. This same kid I've been teaching to discriminate 1 and 2. And everything just keeps falling in place today. I'm like, today is a great day. With this, I am satisfied for the day. So we have to not be hard on ourselves as teachers. Don't be hard on yourself. Just be consistent. The more you do it, change strategies. The same strategy may not work for child A. It may not work for child B. It may work for child C. Whatever it is, always ask for help. Thank you. So I think the next point, we kind of made it short so that we can have, because we might not be able to get through all the points. It's broad, it's huge. But during the Q&A sessions, I think we'll be able to throw more questions out that we can be able to answer. Let's make it interactive. Ask your questions and we'll see how far we get to it.
Can I ask a question to the floor?
Yeah.
Can you raise your hand if you currently have, or in the last years, have had what you think might be an autistic child in your care? You raise your hand right up. Okay. Can you raise your hand up if you think you currently recognize recognise that we have any children like that right now in our care? Raise your hand up. Look around the room. That's a lot. So we have a lot of potentially autistic children touching all of our lives every second we're in school. And that's the importance of this. Okay, so it's over to you now. Questions now.
So who is okay, thank you. Can we have one of the questions, please? Don't tell me you don't have questions.
Is your hand up for a question? We must have questions.
Okay, question.
If you don't have, you can paint the typical scenario in your classroom and we can see how we can come in.
Question. All right. We talked about diagnosing autism as early as 1 to 2 years. I don't think that's, from what I know, I know you don't diagnose autism until about 3 years. And from experience, I have a son. My son spoke at the age of 4. Now he can read, he talks very well, he doesn't have any problem with anything. So I think when we talk about diagnosis, we need to watch, there's a thin line between, some children have very delayed development, the curve is not, all children don't develop like this, some will go like this and they come up again. So we need to be careful when we say we don't diagnose autism until about age 3. And it appears in 3 major areas, the behavior, social interaction, and the need for sameness. Again, there are also children that are high functioning autistics, okay? Very high functioning. They speak, everything looks good, but it shows in one area, it might be that need for sameness, might be using particular type of pen. If they don't have the pen, then nothing will happen that day. Where's my pen? I need to use my pen. But, so yeah, we have a lot of people like that as well. So just want to show
So, Mr. Richard, you're saying that all of us, because it says that it's a spectrum from 0 to 10.
Yeah.
So all of us inside here are on, because I have a particular pen or type of pen doesn't work for me. Thank you. Other questions? All right.
Can anybody address, what did you say? You can't diagnose autism until 3? Is that what-
3, yes.
Okay, has anybody got anything to say about that?
I would like to say something about that. Remember when I was talking, I said when there are things of concern, you should look into them. Not necessarily diagnosing at that point in time. You were looking into them, you're taking notes, right? And even now from research, you don't have to wait till 3 years actually. Children get therapy from 18 months. Yeah. Right.
Do you know how old they are in the UK? 3. Some will be 6 months old. 18 months old might be the average. We're not saying let's diagnose every child who's got a quirky thing. We have all of us diagnosed. me and Harry top the list. Yes? We're not looking for quirky. We're looking for a series of things. Not just one doesn't make you autistic. But this one and this one and this one and this repetitive one and this. When you get the whole picture, that's when we can give a diagnosis. So you're right in what you say, but we have to look at the bigger picture.
Okay, but sorry, what's your name, please?
Mr. Uchi.
Mr. Uche. I also wanted to emphasize on something. You said your child didn't talk at 4, right? Till 4, up till 4. Did you just fold your hands at home without doing anything?
I looked at other areas and I see that there's nothing wrong with this child. So
And you didn't seek for help at all?
no, because
I feel that because you have an experience in that. Typically, if my child, when we go for forget antenatal, after the delivery, when you go to hospitals, people are telling you, oh, my 6 months, my child is even talking at 6 months. You are even scared for yourself. You will go on Google to search to know if you're in the track. One of the things that kept my sanity in check, what I had was that I had a doctor who was so close, and he said, I want you to be aware of something. Mothers can put you on their toes, and you will think everything is wrong. But then why am I mentioning this? If your child, it doesn't matter whether it's on the spectrum, you find out something is not right, it's very typical for you to find help. It doesn't matter. That's the picture we are trying to paint to parents, to people. It doesn't matter what people think about this child. Some people don't even want these children to come to access help. You will think, okay, why do people have lesson teachers for their kids, even after going home, after learning in school? Because they want the child to be better at what they do, right? So just see it as one of the, I'm having an extra help to help my child to meet up with this challenge she's having. So that's the picture we keep telling parents, teachers, anybody who cares to know. Forget about what people think, just seek help. If eventually the child is fine, it's to your own advantage, but do what? Seek help. Thank you.
I've been on the receiving end of some reports, and I know the child is autistic. You know the child is autistic, but it comes back the child is ADH. But as long as I can read that the strategies in place are addressing the child's needs, I don't care if the parent has said, please don't write autism on the form. I don't care. What we have to ensure is we get correct intervention in place for these children.
Miss Honey.
So we have children who are autistic and the spectrum is wide, as you all said. But what if a child is on the far end of the spectrum? They are not high functioning and they are not receptive to anything. What do you guys do within your foundation to support parents? Because within the school, we know what we do as a school. But if we were to refer to have a relationship with the foundation, what do you offer to our parents? Why should we refer you? What will you give our parents that will help to make Miss Green's work a lot easier?
Okay, so one major thing we do is parent training.
Parent training.
Yes. We don't just leave it, say, oh, this is what your child is going through and then deal with it. No. We do parent training. First of all, we meet your child. We see what your child is and what your child is capable of doing. So we put you in the know of where your child is and what your child is able to do. Then we then let you know what you have to do at home to help your child, because we're not with the child 24 hours of the day.
I think you got my question.
Okay.
Miss Green would, because in a school like this, Miss Green's already done her work, so our parents would, I assume, already know. I'm a parent, and my child, I now have this extra information that my child might be on the spectrum. I already have a report from Miss Green and from my child's school.
Okay.
But as a parent with a child with autism, how am I supposed to deal with that? What does your foundation offer to that parent? I'm not talking about the diagnosis. We have already gotten one from the school. The school alerted me to something I need. What kind of support programs do you offer? What kind of mother brunches are we doing in Abuja? We offering chance for me as a mom to sit with another parent who has an autistic child, and I now know that I can go to that child because we might have similar. I need to know because parents will need to know this information.
You're talking about emotional support.
Is there a
emotional
is there
support
a network of resources and not just emotional support that I can go to for therapy once a week, or I can go to for coffee mornings?
so that mothers can talk?
Okay, so we always organize this thing called Exceptional Moms Tea Party. So yeah, so where mothers come together, because it makes you feel better if you know that you're not alone. When you see someone else who is able to encourage you, maybe sharing their own experience of where their child were and now they have been able to achieve these milestones, it helps you feel better. And then you know that even though your child is here right now, your child has the opportunity to go higher. So we do that form of thing. And then we also do summer camps, conferences for parents, for teachers, for caregivers. We do those kind of things.
Like the last workshop we had the parent speak from his own point. And that's kind of elevated the spirit of other moms who were at the workshop. To know that they weren't alone. There was this networking. When you have a network, so how did they talk to each other? And one of the things we are trying to create is like a WhatsApp group for these people to be able to talk to each other and see what they have experienced or what they are still experiencing.
And however, as a parent and as a therapist too, we understand that, okay, some of them might just be feeling down and all that. These meetings with parents, they don't happen every day. So as therapists, we also give you access. Okay, fine, you want to understand some things about the child or how you're feeling. We are also there for you as an individual to hear you out, you understand, and to help you understand or go through whatever emotional thing you're going through. So basically, we don't leave you alone. We try to be there for you. You understand? We try to be there for you as the child progresses.
Okay. Ms. Hannah, do you have a question?
How do we get a parent who is in denial of the spectrum from the child's perspective, saying, having them understand that the child actually has this and there's a way to support the child, rather than putting the child in the mainstream and having the child access education the same way other children will access education without that support, and then they keep going on and on, year in, year out, without having to tap into the child's needs. How do you think we should let the parent understand it?
I think it's part of the awareness. Most schools don't even know this. The more you create an awareness for this, and the school, they are aware. Some schools don't even know what to do. But if there is a support, kind of, they have this aware, they are aware of something, there is something that can be done. They can follow procedures. Just the same thing Mrs. Brain does here. I don't know if you have anything.
Yeah, I wanted to say something. So this child in reception to your school, if I come in and say, okay, this my child is 3-year-old, I expect this child to be in nursery 2, and you'd be like, okay, you can't just take my child to nursery 2 because I said so, right? You have some sort of chart, assessment this child has to go through. And then you look at this chart, there are some challenges, there are some missing points, and you'd be like, okay, if my child I'm claiming is meant to be in nursery 2 cannot even hold a pencil, and everyone in the class is writing 1 to 50. Is my child supposed to be there? So you have to, when you have all these points ready, I'm sure if the brain, since it's a department, or if you have the opportunity to meet with the parents, you'll be like, okay, fine, this child is lacking in these areas. And in all honesty, it cannot fit properly in this class. However, there are some people we know that take care of these challenges, that can help improve this child. What we do at the center, we don't keep them there forever. We kind of work with them, make them better and ready for mainstream. So if this child gets referred to us, fine, we do our own assessments, we look at those challenges this child is going through, and then work on them. And over time, once we are confident to say, okay, young man, you're ready to leave, the highest thing we can even support is support 8 once we move the child into mainstream, because being on the spectrum still means that you're changing environment. They need to, get adapted to the new environment, even if they were coming in from that initially. But changes happen. So you need to have someone by their side to tell them it's okay. Then you understand that, okay, they are learning this in this way. The support aid, or with the proper training, will be able to, even if it's prompting or modifying his teaching technique. You understand me? So however, that's what we're trying to say now. You can't just come and say, oh, okay, your child cannot do this. That's it. No, you have to be sorted. They are human beings. They have emotions. They can be in denial. They can even get angry at you. But you just have to make them understand that it's not the end of the world. There are places where they can get help. In fact, honestly speaking, like my colleague mentioned, these kids are gifted. And so you can even use the opportunity to harness those gifts and make it outshine every other challenge they have. However, still working on those challenges. You understand? So that's one of the things we do.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say one.
Can I introduce this lady? Stand up. This lady currently needs a medal. She's working with a young lady in C2C who is everything and more that they have spoken about today. And she's doing it by herself. The mother is so frazzled with the child, can't even bring herself to come to the school to meet me. Father said today that they can't cope, but she is expected to. Yeah?
Well, just before you start, I would say not just she. There's a whole lot of them seated out there where they are expected to. So when you applaud yourself. one voice.
Yeah, let's listen to Miss
One voice,
Raphael.
please.
Oh, well, I'm not sure I deserve that clap because we're still working on this particular child. I just wanted to say something in regards to what you said about diagnosis. I know that in Ireland, a full-on diagnosis cannot be done on any child that is having learning difficulties until they are 3. I find what Ms. Breen said quite interesting, that you can actually look into these areas. However, they can start learning intervention before they are 3. So they can say, oh, reduce screen time, improve hands-on learning experiences until the diagnosis comes through. My thesis is titled Autism in Preschool Children. I had a friend who had an autistic child. That was why I became interested in this area of learning. But in the last 4-5 months, I'm beginning to think probably I know nothing, because last term I thought I was figuring out this child, we were doing well, and then we resumed in January. It's like a Pandora box. I'm not sure what I'm dealing with. We deal with one thing today, tomorrow is a new thing. So I said to my TA said, look, listen, she's autistic. I said, no, we can't say that. We just can't say that. Then tomorrow she says she's ADHD. I said, then the following day said, I think they have not found what is really wrong with her. I said, we can't say that. But I thank God that Ms. Brain is working with us now, and I'm quite excited because Dad accepted what she said today. And I'm looking forward to whoever she's going to choose with Dad's help. Yeah.
But this child is not only an unhappy child. She's hitting, she's biting, she's kicking.
No empathy.
No empathy. Yeah. She spits in the faces of her children that she plays with. I've seen a smack from this little girl like I've never seen in my life. She is a big. But do you know how we listen? Mummy is really, really at the end of her tether. And this stays in the room because we're professionals. Mummy has resorted to locking her in a room. She's screaming for help. Screaming for help. Everything you said and more this little girl does. But I'm dancing with the dad because the dad doesn't want to offend the mom, and everybody's coping with this child.
Let me just finish. One of the reasons why I say I'm so confused, because she has eye contact. She engages in back and forth communication.
Yeah.
She can stay on task from start to finish. The only thing I can say, she doesn't display good empathy, and she can get things like, I don't know, I use the phrase, I always say she doesn't link up things very well. You can be saying something to her and she'll say something completely different, and you'll be like, what happened? But she's articulate, she knows her numbers, she knows her sounds. That's why I'm saying, I think maybe I need to go back to college and relearn.
The whole world is about her. The whole world is about her.
How old is she?
4.
She's 4. Mr. Vincent.
Okay, Mr. Vincent's an important one to listen to because we know who Mr. Vincent was. Yeah. 5 years ago. Let's listen to Mr. Vincent.
My question is, say for instance you're working with a child and you have decided you're working with him.
Mr. Vincent,
Sorry.
can you start again for those who weren't listening?
Okay. I'm working with a child and I have a target I'm working on. And after some time, I felt the target has been achieved. Because I've checked and said, okay, this target has been achieved. Then I started working on another target. Then after some time, that same target I've worked on that I felt has been achieved. So how do I...
Okay, so we could definitely relate with what you're saying. But you know, with these children, you don't leave the target hanging on the boat. Never. You always have to review them. As much as you're bringing new targets, you want to keep checking with the old ones. So let's say I'm working on clap hands. This child has mastered the target clap hands. Now I'm doing something feet. Every once in a while, I bring in clap hands when I'm doing stomp your feet. I say stomp your feet, clap hands, stomp your feet. Because what happens is this child is only able to get one target at a time. So how do you increase their memory if you're not bringing more than a target at a time? So what's happening with the child is the child's memory size is still where it is. It can only take one thing per time.
So you don't stop, keep working on it.
Yes.
Always.
You can
Always.
keep reviewing them. Yeah.
Especially when they go on holidays.
Come back.
When they come back, you'll be so shocked. All the master programs, all the generalized programs, they have all forgotten. You don't just start introducing something new. You go back, review every other target. What we call it is like having it, maintaining the program.
I've had, how should I put it? Once upon a time in our UK schools, we had special schools. And so therefore, children with autism, children with ASD and children with whatever other diagnosis would be diverted away from mainstream and into special schools. And then there was a bit of a revolution, yes? And which was driven by parents. In actual fact, was driven by mostly by middle class parents. Because the thing about in London, which is where I do most of my teaching, middle class parents got wind of that extra money that they could have for their children. So on the one hand, you would have working class parents would be exactly, we don't want no diagnosis, nothing wrong with our child, we don't need this, we don't. Whereas middle class parents would fight the local authority tooth and nail to get every penny from them. So our job in school was, as you said, was to convince parents. And I'd say, if someone was giving your child, £10,000, would you say you don't want it? And then to say, this is exactly what you're doing when you're trying to push the local authority away. So there was a revolution, and children with autism and other special needs now were diverted into mainstream. It was quite a challenge for mainstream because we would get, an assessment. We would get an assessment, land as head teacher, you'd get an assessment package, land on your desk, and basically the local authority would be looking which school this child was going to be placed in. And I would say that at the start, heads would do everything that they can to say that our school was not the right school for that child. So it's a bit of a battle. But eventually, more and more of our children who were normally diverted into special schools came into mainstream. What you have to recognise is, I suppose, it's not an event. It's a process. I still have the picture of a primary school. So children who come into primary school, which often have a nursery attached, so it's early years through, would come through our early years, go into our reception. So that was one of the beauty of being in a state school. Yes? Yeah. Maybe the stayed in. But they would come in, they would be in our reception class, and then all 30 of those in our reception class, including any autistic or other special needs child, would go on into our year 1. So, and they would go from year 1 to year 6. So the children, one of the beauty was, at the end of year 6, yes, we can track that because these are children that we had in reception. So we could truly talk about the difference that the school has made to the child. Now what sticks in my memory that in recognising this, we had, forgive me, his name is forgotten, but his memory remains. And he was a child that we thought we're just not going to be able to meet his needs. However, the local authority assigned to our school. And so you just have to get over that because you know the demands. But I remember one of the things about this fixation, so we'd have assembly, the usual big assembly hall, and from 1 to 6 would go into assembly hall. For him, he spent the whole time in assembly pushing the doors that would go forward, swing back, go forward, swing back, go forward, swing back. Eventually he got into the hall and sat down, but he would wail through assembly. Now, you spoke about becoming socially part of that community and socially accepted. One of the, the real good aspect of this was that this is exactly what happened. He was with mainstream children, and mainstream, he was part of the community. So the wailing in assembly didn't bat an eyelid. The swinging of the doors didn't bat an eyelid, and none of his peculiar ways did not interfere. The children worked with him, and he became. So he joined us in reception. He stood out like a sore thumb, they would say. Anyone walking in would say, and going to that class would say, that's a child with autism. By the time he left in year 6, I would say you'd come into my school and you would not be able to pick this child out. It's not an event that happens over 6 months, or it's a process of accumulation of what happens. We hope, and this is I always get a bit anxious because it's different here. There's no certainty here that the children that we have this year are going to be with us next year. And that's the sort of thing that's a little bit of my sadness, because I know that if we have them at reception and they stay in 1 and they stay in 2 and they go in 6, that we can really build and actually, they become, I can always remember him. We had an inspection. We love to give duties and tasks to our children in the school, and one of it was helping out at lunchtime. And so you walk in at lunchtime, and there he was. You wouldn't be able to say that's a child with autism. So from swinging the doors back and forth, he would wipe tables, he'd lay out, and he was part of the school community. He was part of the social of that community. In the end, sadly, he did, when he transitioned for secondary, because I don't think the secondary had got to that, he did go to special in secondary. But the fact is that the primary experience with the way we deliver learning, the way we actually take each child's differences into consideration, is the ideal setting, I think, for our children with autism. And over time, just this year, Mr. Vincent spoke, and the child that you're speaking of, the amount of progress that has happened between September, when he had a new teacher, new classroom that was no longer on the ground floor, he had to go upstairs, different be it arrangements, and I think you guys need to give yourselves a pat on the back, because there's such strong elements of continuity. Yes, we have our visual timetables. Yes, we have a fantastic SEN team that so you're doing a fabulous job with our children. But I just wanted to share with you my story of my experiences with children with autism that have gone through the school that I've worked at, and we've been proud to have had them as part of the school community.
Yes. I just want to again thank the team here. To me, they're invaluable. I thank the day that I found them. They really have been a godsend to me, because they have helped so many children in other schools, and I have seen miracles happening. And it is all about early intervention. It's about getting the right intervention, and I really don't care about a diagnosis with a label. And I know that because the labels terrify parents in Nigeria. We're beyond that in the UK, but I understand that that's not the case here in Nigeria. So we don't have to give them the labels, but we do have to give them, we owe it to them to give them the pertinent intervention. And you said earlier on about some of these children are gifted. The most talented pianist I've ever heard in my life was an 8-year-old boy who was just so highly strung, very intelligent, high achieving on the spectrum. And one day I thought I was just going to take him out of the classroom, took him, walking him all around, found the piano. I said, can you play the piano? He said no, sat him down, started tinkling about. It must have been 6 weeks later I heard that child play, and I could not believe my ears in 6 weeks, because he became so focused in the piano, he did whatever it took. Yes, he became obsessed with the piano, but gifted beyond belief. So, and I do believe that's true of all autistic children. You have to find the gift, but there's always a gift there. So, thank you very much for the team. Carry on doing what you're doing.